Thank you. Have you ever had a big dream goal? Maybe even one you've never told anybody about. Years ago, for as long as I can remember, I've wanted to be a singer on a stage. I thought that was it. I wanted to be a famous singer on a stage. Well, I was a very, very shy child, so I couldn't really imagine how that was going to happen. I wasn't going to sing in front of anyone. And, you know, up in my bedroom, I had this amazing poster, and it was a picture of flying birds through the sky. And the quote on it was from Langston Hughes, and the first stanza was, "Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly." So this was a real inspiration for me and a real anchor at a young age. I'm a professor, a researcher, a life coach, and I have a Ph.D. in social work, and I focus on adolescents, and especially adolescents in schools that are having trouble academically as well as with mental health. And as we know today, the problems with mental health and with all of us, including adults, it's greater than ever. So I'm very dedicated to the work I do. But let me go back and tell a little personal story about how I got to even be on this stage and do the work that I do. If anyone felt like a broken-winged bird, I think it was me in high school. My anxiety as a child of kind of wanting to not be called on and hide and, you know, that kind of thing, not knowing the answer, it just escalated to the point where I actually didn't want to go to school. And I skipped school a lot in 10th grade. That was the beginning of high school for us in the United States. And I think a lot of the administrators thought, well, she's just being, you know, I don't know, defiant. And really, I couldn't even tell people, no, I'm too afraid to go to the school. It's big, it's noisy. I was a year younger than everyone. The guys, suddenly I'm, 14 with these 18-year-olds coming onto me, and I'm like, oh. And I had the same hair I have today, and I used to wear it like this at school, you know. And I just couldn't feel safe in my skin. So eventually I dropped out of school. And I didn't have enough credits, actually, to become an 11th grader because I'd skipped so much. So I actually am the label, high school dropout. I'm a high school dropout with a Ph.D. And it's interesting to have to reconcile that right here in this person. So what I did and how I loved learning. So this is also counterintuitive. I loved learning. I went to the library all the time. I probably should have been homeschooled or something, but because I just was bored also. But in any case, what fueled me was reframing. And I just did this naturally. I never called myself a dropout probably until a few years ago where I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I was or what I did. But actually what I would say is I left school early. I left high school early. And in the United States, we could get a general equivalency diploma that we studied for. I went to a community college. That's the 2 years of college. I transferred to a 4-year college. And then I went and got a master's degree and then a Ph.D. It sounds like, oh, la, 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 but it was, took time. Sometimes I'd take a semester off because I was having troubles. All through, I have managed and dealt with anxiety. And so I'm here today to really talk about how can we reach dream goals when we have dealt with obstacles in our lives and difficulties. There could be, you've had a death of someone close to you that really interrupts your life. It could be some kind of a disability, an accident, any kind of adversity that you can think of in your life. Many of us have had them, many more worse than others. But it was hard for me, actually, in graduate school to sometimes feel like, oh, I'm like all the other people here that are probably valedictorians. it was hard. It was hard to kind of keep on going. And another mantra I had was slow and steady wins the race. But in any case, what I've done at the university is go to interview. I have undergraduates come with me, and my research is about interviewing people who have dropped out of school, since that's my interest area, but have then come back to education. And I wanted to know what was their pathway? How did they get themselves kind of, as we say, back up on the horse? And this is research, so we interviewed a lot of people, and we found there were about several themes, but 3 that I'm going to talk about today. Well, the first was, of course, we had to establish that they'd had some adversity in their lives, some hardship, whatever that might be. And then we noticed that all the people who had kind of had this hardship were able to look back at it with compassion. That actually this is a step that can help us reach our future goals, is to look backward. A lot of times we're told, no, don't think about your past. We overcome our past. Those terms we use. But in fact, these people were able to say, and we were dealing with a lot of people with really serious kinds of backgrounds. I went to jail. I dealt drugs because I thought I needed to take care of my family. This was a guy. I'm 42, and I'm back getting my general equivalency diploma because I need to, I want to, and I have compassion for that person back then. We found that a lot. And it's the same with myself. It's looking back. At first there's that shame, but then when we look at it and take a look back, we can kind of say, you did the best you could. There weren't people helping back then. You couldn't tell people that you were terrified to go to school. So it's just kind of having that self-compassion helps us then self-heal, in a sense. So the next thing that these people had, in addition to looking back to the past, was then reaching forward to the future and having goals that were values-based. Values-based meaning goals that really have some meaning for me. So one of the women said, who had fought and beaten people up and kicked out of school for that, she was probably in her 30s actually, but she was talking about that and hadn't gone back to school until about her 30s. She said, the reason I want to get my education is to be a good role model for my 2 sons. I still feel the trigger to knock somebody out if they say something about my family members. But I'm realizing that I need to kind of learn about how to deal with these triggers for my sons. So again, values-based goals were really key. And the third piece that was key for these people to reach goals, even with their adversities and difficulties, was what we call having metacognitive skills, which is cognitive means thinking. You're thinking about your life. You're looking back and looking forward and planning what humans do. And the meta part is learning about, thinking about your thinking. So it's kind of analyzing, what kind of beliefs did I have back then? Did I think I was capable of this goal that I have? And it's kind of looking at yourself and your beliefs and being aware of them and being kind to yourself. And then saying, look, I've had to say that a lot. Okay, so I dropped out of school. What does that mean? I didn't have a whole bunch of these, chemistry, physics, but I'm not dumb. I kind of get it's a lot of working on yourself. So what we did with these themes, and that's the title of my talk, is we thought of resilience really as a process and not just sometimes, as people might say, a trait. You have it or you don't. These are the characteristics of resilient people. We thought of it as skills. Resilience building skills are those where we can reflect back and plan, and in the moment help counter those negative beliefs that come up in our heads and kind of say, well, here's another way to think about it. Or when we have obstacles in our future, our adversities aren't always behind us, which we hear a lot about, overcome, but they come up. So what are the kinds of things we can think about ahead of time that we might want to do to try something different or try something new, reach out to someone. So these are the things that we found in my research, and we called it, the whole process, transformational resilience, because people were building skills and they were transforming over time. But they weren't changing from that old person to here's my new self. It was, I'm bringing my adversity with me. I am a whole person. And that is who I am here today. When I'm a professor, I'm also remembering that person who hid out by a little stream so that I could skip school, and all I had was my journal, and I had no idea what was going to happen to me in my future. I am that person. And that's the hardest part, is to pull those things together and embrace who we are, all of us. Because then I can go forward, and my goals and dreams are to come back to schools, which I do, and I work with kids who are at risk of dropping out, and I can say, I know what it's like to skip school. I know what it's like to be suspended. I know it's hard to believe. I know what it's like to talk back to an administrator, the fight and the flight, and I know what it's like to walk out of a class, because I just was needing to. I actually jumped out of a first floor window in English class because I thought the vice principal was at the door to talk to me. And so I jumped out, and then later my friends said to me that the principal wasn't coming for you, Anne. And so I didn't even need to jump out the window, but that's kind of what I did. And and now these emotional kinds of fight, flight, or freeze, it also comes in handy. I mean, I have to manage anxiety. I still do. But I tell people, watch out, my students, watch out if you're sitting here or here, because I'm demonstrative, and that's okay. I want to fly just like those birds. And I would just say, try these things out, look at your life, look back at your adversities with compassion, look deeply into them. How can you mine your adversities for even goals that you might have in the future? Have some values-based goals that can carry you forward through all the obstacles, and just regularly look at those goals. They're so meaningful, they're so important. What you've been through in your life is other people need to hear about it, and they need to hear how you have not overcome, but how you have worked with adversity to make it a whole part of yourself, and then to reach your goals. So I'm not a singer on a stage. I do have a little band. I write a few songs, but I am just so happy that I can help kids today who are also struggling, and adults, and I'm so happy to be here. Hold fast to dreams.